All right, hello and welcome to Wise Up on Air. My name is Damian Kaspauer, software product manager here at Audiokinetic, and I'm super stoked for today's episode. We'll be talking about mixing Baldur's Gate 3 with Wise. This is going to be a fantastic developer hands-on, so let's go. Up front, we're going to talk through some of the exciting things happening out in the world. First off, a little bit of news from Audiokinetic, a little bit of community spotlight, which is something we like to do here where we shine a light on cool stuff happening out in the community. We're going to talk about Audiokinetic in the community. We got some exciting stuff in store. For folks in the know, you may already have an indication of what that's going to be about. And then we're going to jump into this Wise Developer Spotlight on Baldur's Gate 3. So first up, news. We have a couple of point releases that just dropped in the last day and two. Wise 22.1.11 and 23.1.2. Cool stuff always happening here at Audiokinetic, where we're adding features, bringing updates, crunching bugs, that we find and that are submitted by the community. So thanks to folks out there. We added preliminary support for Vision OS. Is anyone rocking that back at the dev studio? I'd love to hear more about what you're doing with Vision OS out in the world, and now you can start to get it worked into your Wise pipelines. We added multiple SDK support to our Unity integration for PlayStation and Nintendo Switch. We've got an option now to enable or disable a feature called the CPU timeline for the advanced profiler. And if you haven't peeked at that yet, toggle that on and you can get a frame by frame visualization of what's happening in the audio engine. We also added some bug fixes for muting and soloing in the mastering suite, along with fixing some incorrect share set values that slipped into the last point release. And again, thanks to the community for surfacing that to us so that we could get it fixed up. 23.1.2 brings improvements to reverb zones, which was one of the new features that was part of the 23.1 release. Transition regions can now overlap with other transitions, as well as portals, and spatial audio just smoothly interpolates between them. Along with an emitter now sending to multiple reverb zones when it's in more than one reverb zone's transition regions. So again, just kind of blowing out the fidelity of reverb zones and continuing to improve and carry forward that technology. And then lastly, in 23.1.2, we've upgraded Inscription for our web platform to 3.1.8. Strata. If you've been following along our multi-track sound library collections, I just wanted to carry some of the cool quotes from a survey from Strata subscribers that we recently did. Folks have got their hands on it. They're using it in their productions. And one of these quotes, being able to look under the hood at so many diverse sounds has been priceless learning experience. What did you discover as a result of subscribing to Strata? Improved production efficiency, greater insights into designers' flow and process, and more than they had hoped for. Other benefits of Strata, flexibility of rendered assets, sessions already available for content, the launcher, it's obvious, but the video game targeted content and the variations, and all of this lining up towards a great new tool for sound designers out there working interactively. And with that, we've added some subscription models, or expanded the number of ways you can subscribe to the Strata collections and get access to all of the existing and forthcoming collections during your subscription term. And this goes from your single project to any number of projects, as well as our new student or academic license. For $100 a year as a student, you get access to all of this content. And like some of those survey responses, like a depth of knowledge out there embedded in these collections. So dig in there. And with that, we've got a conversation coming up about the March collection, our Gore collection. I bet it's going to be juicy. Tune in for that in April. And of course, we have a ton of past Strata collection episodes that we've featured here on Wise Up on Air when we've gone hands-on with Chase Steele, digging into these projects, exposing some of the cool pieces, and then hearing the results of their application in an Unreal demo project. And as always, jump in, grab those free Strata samples that you can get through your customer portal and through the Audiokinetic launcher. You can use those today. They are full multi-track sub-projects with individual sounds, these rendered audio files, designed effects. It's all there for you to get going. So next up, I want to jump into something we do here called the Community Spotlight. And speaking of community, it's so cool to see folks in the chat here today queued up to talk with folks from Larian about Baldur's Gate 3 mixing. Good to see some familiar names in there. Yeah, hey, good to see you. So digging into the Community Spotlight, the first thing I wanted to talk about was a cool recreation of a procedural music system from Alish Ramon, where he recreated a small-scale version of the Settlers' New Allies music system, 16,000 music files, and using description of the system by the composer, and just a cool deep dive into a complex recreation of a music system that really lives and breathes across different dynamic possibilities. The next thing I wanted to talk about were a couple of folks in the industry who are finding new ways to leverage Wise as part of their Reaper workflows. So 2 projects that allow you to leverage markers in Reaper to post events in Wise, and workflows that can allow for auditioning sounds and behaviors from Wise alongside the playback in Reaper. So cheers to Thomas Fritz and Mark Hasselbach for expanding on these possibilities for designers to iterate with Wise in their Reaper workflows. Next up is Mike Higgs, a fantastic demonstration of chaos physics collisions in Unreal using Wise, and the Impactor plugin, our cross-synthesis plugin that expands on the capabilities of sound variations and the standard dynamics that you expect in most physics systems. So great overview. Thanks for that, Mike. And finally, Evashi Karawa with a tool he created to create ambient zones. So again, creating ambient zones to allow for the dynamic, ambient sound transitions across uniquely shaped spaces is something that we're all working towards, trying to find the right workflows across different game engine implementations. So a great walkthrough of this ambient zone tool that he created. And I will get all of those links into the chat here in a moment, as well as in the comments section of this live stream after the fact. Thank you to the community. I'm inspired by the great work you're doing out there. It's so cool to see and hear the ways that you're approaching interactive audio with Wise, and I thank you a lot. Cheers, folks. Good to see some of you in the chat, in fact. Yeah. Speaking of the community, Audiokinetic is going to be at GDC next week, if you can believe it. It's the second most wonderful time of the year for us at Audiokinetic. The first, in my opinion, being the launch of a new version, but having a chance to dig in with the community on the ground in San Francisco is a gift. We're going to be bringing a bunch of folks from the team at Audiokinetic to meet with, talk, and just geek out about interactive audio. So please, if you're coming to the conference, drop by and let us know how that is going for you. Stream's working? Yeah? No? Yeah? And if you're going to be at GDC, drop by because we've got 3 days of presentations kicking off on Wednesday on the expo floor with another deeper dive into this Baldur's Gate 3 mixing system. So, more always in the pipeline for you here to get educated about Wwise and what's going on. And a ton of other Wwise developers bringing their experience. Alan Wake 2, we've got troubleshooting with Wwise from Guillaume on our support team. Haptic feedback, get your hands on Wwise Motion and hear about haptics from a couple of folks from Insomniac. The audio of X Defiant, how to voice dynamic content using Reed Speaker. Somerville, this is one that I'm super stoked for, an audio deep dive from the folks behind the sound for that really interesting indie game. Dialogue innovation, we got Matthew Strasser talking about the breathing system in Spider-Man 2. What's new and what's next with Wwise? Oh, that's me. Spatial audio acoustics from Talika Klikian on our R&D team. And then Friday, we'll go into music for It Takes Two, finding space for sound in Avatar. Rob Banton going to go deep with us on that. And then more haptics. So Christian Romer will take us, again, hands-on with motion in Wwise. So yeah, if you're going to be at GDC, definitely swing by. We got a full educational roundup for you. And if you're new to this thing called game audio, we just had a live stream with folks from the education team talking about getting started. So if all of this feels a little bit big and scary, we try to take you through the first steps of what it's like to get started using game audio with Wwise. So now that we've done that, let's switch over to our feature presentation. And I'd like to invite to the live stream today, folks from Larian. Hey, welcome to Wwise Up on Air.
Hi.
All right. Good to see you, and thanks for standing by during all of that exciting stuff that we have happening here at Audiokinetic, and thank you for being part of it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's do some short introductions, and then I know that folks are queued up to hear more about mixing in Baldur's Gate 3, so Stefan, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a little overview of where you've been?
Yeah. I'm Stefan. I'm the audit director here at Larian. I worked on BG3 over the last 1.5 years, and before that, I used to work almost 9 years for Ubisoft, also for Piranha Bytes, and before that for Electronic Arts, and before all of that, TV and movie audio stuff, band recording, all of that jazz. But this is really long ago, like 25 years. That's me.
It always starts somewhere, right?
Yeah, it always starts somewhere.
Usually with
it always starts with a cool band.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay. I like it. I agree. Is that the same for you, Matheus? To
Yeah.
start with a cool band?
I'd say so. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, introduce yourself to the
Yeah.
live stream, and great to have you. Thanks, Stefan.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So, hello, everyone. My name is Matheus. I'm a senior technical sound designer at Larian. I also teach Wise and Game Audio at Vancouver Film School, where I'm currently based, Vancouver. Yeah, before Larian, worked on Baldur's Gate for 2 years. Did a lot of work on that, a lot of cool Wise automation, a lot of mixing. That's why I'm here today, and a bunch of other things. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Yeah. Like and to me, I'm so excited to hear about, all the things you're able to accomplish as a technical sound designer, as an audio director for the project using Wise. It in the hands of folks creating these dynamic experiences, for me, it's always awesome to arrive and, yeah, hear the cool stuff that y'all been up to. We're getting huge shout outs to you in the chat. Great to have folks here. Keep us posted as we're going through. Are there things that you want us to zoom in on and get a little more detail around? I know that the two of you are up for it. So, folks in the chat, definitely feed us with additional context that would be interesting. And let's rock and roll.
Yeah, let's go. So, we want to talk a little bit about how we mixed and how we worked on Baldur's Gate in general. Basically, I thought we give a little bit of a background, especially a little bit from a perspective as me as an audio director coming into a project that was already going on for, at that point, 5 years. So I encountered a really big audio team spread out over the whole globe, basically. So there's our team at Quebec. Hi, by the way. There's our team in Dublin, also hi. And the team in Guildford, they are over here because this is where I'm at the moment. And we had a lot of remote people, so I'm very happy that all of them worked with us and still working with us. And I joined that project to take care of this whole setup and to take care that the mixes is done. So basically, this is also the reason why I'm talking a little bit together with Matheus about how we approached that and how we did that. And at that point, as you can see, the team was pretty big. With we had an audio programmer, we had 3 technical sound designers, 12 sound designers, and 15 cinematic sound designers, all of them at peak. And they worked with us and got BG3 shipped at the end, as all of you know. The point was, it was all about tons of content. So basically, I came in and I got presented, hey, here is this small little game that we did, which is like huge. And now take care that this get mixed and that we have a really nice soundscape. And as you can see, we had up to 2 million words only in English. It's not about Loka, it's really everything in English. That we needed to take care of. We had 174 hours of cinematics ongoing. We had 700 plus player spells and actions, 400 plus creature spells and actions. So there was so much content and so much good creative content from all of the sound designers. They worked hard on that. It was basically a big pile of really cool content and really cool sounds. Great environment, great music by Bobby, our composer. That was really like all over the place, really good stuff. And then it was about how do we get that mixed and how do we look into that and what is the tactics in doing that. Basically, a few things needed to be set up because it is still this worldwide spanned team from Quebec to Dublin to Guildford, and of course all of our other studios that were helping out and that we needed to have discussions with about certain topics. But we needed to figure out ways to mix that together and work on that. So basically, yeah, that's the setup at the moment. This is what we wanted to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, and as games have scaled to grow larger and larger, like clearly you're able to leverage these folks, their resources, their speciality. I know we're going to dig deep into Matheus's role and the focus that he was able to give. And as the audio director, stepping into it towards the end, having so much in place, this is what we're going to talk through now, is how you shape that into something that gives you that moment to moment feeling of dynamics that we know in games is the special thing that our industry brings to these experiences. So I couldn't be more excited to dig into what went into shaping that and crafting it. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we will look into that, because there was a lot. There was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of content, and basically the idea was, how can I bring this together? How can I work with the team to make this a beautiful soundscape that really works together on all fronts? And because there are so many mechanics, so many things that you can do, all of that is of course done with some nice sounds. But where's the focus? What do you want to listen to at which given point in time? There was a lot of discussions on how to mix that, and we had first sessions in Quebec together with a lot of people and looked into this. The first one was, we needed to figure out some proper workflows. So the tactics that we came up with, what workflows and what we need to achieve and get running to work on that. And then, of course, out of that, which tools and which techniques do we want to facilitate to make that work? So basically, on the workflow side, we had the remote sessions, which was a really interesting and important topic, because normally what I prefer to do for mixing sessions is having the possibility to let's start a little bit different. Back then, when I started with game audio in the beginning, mid of the 2000s, normally I needed to go into the engine, tweak an XML file, and do like 1 digit higher on the, hey, this is the loudness of that file, and then I needed to compile, and then I needed to build, and then I needed to go to the place where this one thing was played back, and then I needed to play it back, and I'm like, okay, that's good, or oh no, it needs to be louder, and then you go back and you edit the sound, you edit the XML, and you go back, and then you need to, and so on and so forth. So
and you're talking sometimes,
like,
an hour, half an hour, like the loop was a long loop.
The turnaround was drastic.
Yeah.
I remember that was a game with a proprietary audio engine. There was not even an audio engine in there, actually, in the sense of a third-party audio engine. It was all proprietary. And you had this really big turnarounds on all of those outcomes. I mean, we made it work. It was cool work together with Bastian. Shout out to Bastian, by the way. Now the audio director at Korea in Amsterdam. So we made it work. We did cool stuff with that. No questions asked. But there was then the point where you could connect to an audio engine and make it work, and just mix it like on the fly. That was like mind blowing at that time for me back then when we came to that point.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was always important, how do we have a cool setup? And normally, what I always wanted to achieve and achieved on several projects is that normally you have this mixing room. You have one PC. The best solution in my view would be to have a QA person that really knows the game by heart and really knows how to trigger the audio stuff. Somebody who really works together on audio, because I value QA people a lot. I think they're super important, and I always back at my Ubisoft days, we had even audio QA personnel in the audio team that really took care of those things. They were driving those sessions. They were playing those sessions, and you see the game in front on the screen or on the projector, whatever setup you have. And I was sitting normally together with the audio designers on the desk, on the front desk, where we had Wwise open and been connected to the PC in the back, basically. And normally we had parts of the team gathered to discuss, to go to a certain part of this session of the game and replay it and ask, hey, could you throw the bomb again, or could you do some steps to the left, to the right? And then we could tweak live in Wwise while doing that. This is how we did mixing sessions and feedback sessions. And I think this is a really nice setup if you have the possibilities to do so.
It definitely leverages that wider team where you've all got ears on it. You're making these real-time assessments. You're making real-time changes, hearing those results, and you're able to take that 30-minute 1-hour iteration loop you were talking about at the start of your career to moment to moment decisions that you're hearing in real time. That's where we're at today.
Yeah, and that is also for me, it's the important part about being together with the team, and that the team has the possibility to talk about it. I always have seen this as a session where we sit together. Because my job as an audio director, when I'm talking about audio direction, I always talk about the vision, which is like a point that we want to achieve. This is in the future, like in 2 years, whatever. We would love to have this game sound like that. This is the soundscape. It's based on creative vision, on talking to the other directors. This is what we would love to achieve. And the team is at the moment over here, and we are over here. And then there is a lot of free space in between, which means the team is free to explore to get there. And there are tons of different ways to achieve that vision. Because I don't think my job as a director is to go there and tell the people exactly where to turn a knob and what to do, because we hired experts. We have team members that know this stuff. This is like, if people who are familiar with that, there's Peter Drucker. He's a management. He wrote a lot of books about management, and there's the knowledge worker. And I think game audio experts in their certain fields are super specialized knowledge workers about a certain topic. And I, as an audio director, I would be crazy to say I know all of that. That's not my job. My job is to take care that all of this special knowledge is taken care of, and that they can work together, that they have the equipment that they need, that they know where to go, where the vision is, that they work together, and that they have the facilities, the time, and no impediments. That is my vision of what audio direction should be, so that the people can work and find their cool way, their own way to this vision over there. I always try to give input. I always give feedback, but I never want to go there and say, turn that one, do this one, or change that. This is at least my vision, my approach, what I think this should be. So when you have these mixing sessions, that is the idea of that, sitting together and having this discussion, and having the input from all of the team members in the room of like, hey, I think the sound that you did is maybe not going in that direction. Here's the vision. It's at the moment there. How could we go there? And then having a discussion about that with the team members and finding a way to go a little bit back, because direction is really about directing to something. Kind of, yeah. That's
nice. Well put. And it's so smart to me that you leverage these specialists, that you leverage, because across a team you're going to have a distribution of different kinds of work, and when those people invest in doing that, they become the expert in the small context of this larger game, and leveraging their experience feels like the right and fastest way to enable that slow arc of arriving at the vision.
Yeah, I think the vision is one of the most important things that I need to establish as a director, together with my peers, other directors, and it's always important to have this communication with the team. when we now have the facilities and the possibilities, that's cool. But there was also something like COVID. Maybe some of you folks remember that. So there was not the possibility to sit in the same room and do that. And so we needed to figure out how to do that in different ways. And we figured stuff out in other companies, but here at Larian, it was the same thing. I needed to work with people in Quebec, Dublin, Guildford, and even when Matheus is working often remote, and he's working in Vancouver. So therefore, it's a broad time spectrum and a lot of it's a long way from those places. So how do we work together? And the first thing that we needed to set up was a possibility to have those mixing sessions. And so I set up some of my most senior team members and worked with them together. And this is Matheus, who's here with me, also super peaked expert about game audio. He knows his shit. You can be sure about that. And then there was Robin, who's in Quebec, also super knowledgeable and very qualified sound designer. And I was like, okay, let's do this together because we need to have a small group to bring all of this together. We did not exclude the rest of the team. We just made, this is now the mixing group, the 3 people. And every time we need something, we can hand out those outputs to the team again, and they can work on the subtopics that we figured out that specific day. So basically what we did, we sit together. I'm based in Düsseldorf most of the time in Germany. So I was sitting in my home studio in Düsseldorf. Robin was sitting in the studio in Quebec, and Matheus was sitting in Vancouver in his home studio. And basically, we did the same setup, but we did it via streaming and via Google Meet meetings, because the beautiful thing is that we have streaming possibilities. They're a little bit like Twitch, and they give us the possibility to show stuff that we're working on and even transmit the 5.1 mix. So basically, I was sitting in my 5.1 mix setup. Matheus has a 4.0, I think. You have a quad setup.
Yeah,
that also...
I do. At home, yeah.
Yeah. And in the studio...
I'm just that old school.
And in the studio in Quebec, we have a I think even the 7.1. And basically, Robin was playing the game in Quebec. He was streaming it to both of us. We were able to listen back whatever he was playing. And Matheus was connecting to the Wwise session from Vancouver to the Quebec studio. And I was sitting in Düsseldorf and listening to the stuff and coming back with feedback and what we could do and how we could achieve the vision. That is one of those things that we did, and how we made that work, and how we actually mixed a big chunk of the game, the core systems, basically.
And it's an inspirational story. Go ahead, Matheus.
I was gonna say, at some point we got so used to it that it became super fast paced. So Stefan would say, "Oh, I think I heard something wrong. I think it's a spell." And I would use Wackel and just like search for things super quick. Solo, Stefan will listen to it. Okay, maybe it's minus 3 dB. Okay, it didn't work. We need an EQ kind of thing. It worked really well. Like, I think defining roles for the people involved in mixing and having all of the tech set up working properly was essential for sure.
Yeah. Nice. And inspirational again, because, question marks coming into hybrid work life scenarios. How are we going to do this? And clearly this is an example where you have a vision, you imagine this mixing workflow that's distributed across locations, and you're able to bridge those gaps using technology in order to get everyone into the same headspace, hearing things appropriately, and yeah, like you said, hands on the tools, quickly navigating and solving these problems in real time together. Excellent. There's a comment here about having multiple hands on the mixing board as well. Were there, I guess, you're all just kind of calling out things in real time. And Matheus, you've got your hands on the mixing desk.
Yeah, essentially. So Hoban was playing the game and with Stefan identifying issues, and I was in real time soloing or muting things or even making real time changes. If the fix was too complex to be done in real time, we would just log that into our issue tracker and send that to someone as a task, right?
Nice.
There's the cool thing. This is also the collection, because we can just collect the issues and just, if we can fix it right away, we don't spend too much time with it, because again, very qualified team. We just know, okay, that's a thing. Could you take care of? And this is normally from person from, I don't know, rank other people that worked on the project, and then we can hand it over to them and they take care of that. And on the next day, we just boot up again and do it all over again. And we already have the new results and small bits and pieces and the fixes that we haven't been able to take care of in a few minutes, because this is, it's a limited amount of time. Also, look at the time window from Vancouver to Düsseldorf. There is just a small my evening window and Matheus morning window, very early morning, very late in the evening for me. And Hoban is kind of in the middle. So you need to make it work, you need to make work 1 or 2 hours of mixing 2 or 3 times a day.
And what you're talking about is this 24-hour cycle. It's this idea that you can have this moment between the team with their ears on it, running this remote session, and then at the end of that, you're handing it off to the team who's just waking up on the other side of the world, and they can just go right at it.
I think this is something where Larian in general, and I think also Sven takes some pride in that. I can speak for Sven, of course, but I really think he does, that he takes some pride in the setup of the studios worldwide, and that we have the capacity and the capability of getting things done and handed over basically step by step around the world. This is part of a useful studio setup. I think this is very smart. And we did it the same way, and I tried to facilitate this setup the best way possible. And therefore we have this 24 hours kind of cycle. It's not a full 24-hour cycle, of course, but there are the possibility to hand over tasks in the evening, because what we did was those are the mixing session in the beginning. So this is how we started mixing at a certain point. This is where we're like, okay, I'm getting used to the game. I was listening to it, talking with the people, figuring out where are the topics that I need to dig in and take care of, and how do we get this done now? And then there was the point in time where we said, okay, we start to mix. We had a few months of this mixing setup together. And then there was a point in time where we said, okay, now we need to move on, because we wanted this to be all 3D audio, and we wanted this to be all Dolby Atmos ready and 3D audio ready. So therefore, we also needed a studio to be capable of that. I extended my home studio to be capable of Dolby Atmos. But for the bigger mixing session, we also went on to another studio where we facilitated that even more. So we've been in London, we've been at Molinar in the mixing stage, and we're sitting down together with Matheus, Andrea, and the 3 of us. And Robin still was in Quebec. And so on a daily basis, Matheus, Andrea, and I, we were just working on that, listening to that, figuring stuff out in Dolby Atmos. The 3D positioning of that, maybe we could, how should we fix that? And then we had all of those bits and pieces that we handed over, that we handed over to the team in Quebec, and they worked on that in the evening. So we had a handover session in the evening, like 5, 6 in the London evening, handed it over to Quebec, and the next morning we came in. Matheus had a smart script set up that already grabbed the new data overnight, basically, and in the morning we just had the new stuff running and continuing working on that, which is a very good way of making use of studio time in a bigger, more expensive studio than your home studio or your regular studio in a game studio.
Yeah, of course. And it helps that you already established this 24-hour cycle where you're making these handoffs. You have folks who are working while you're resting, and then you're able to pick up their work and keep running in the studio while the clock is ticking. So, smart way to do it. And I think, again, I'll say it, inspirational for folks who are trying to still balance and find this hybrid work life trade-off, right? And a great way to get there faster across the entire team. What about scheduled testing? Is that another piece of this that we talked about, or is this part of the 24-hour cycle where you have QA who is also digging in and trying to find these issues and surface them and correct them?
Yep, that was essentially it. We had one QA person in charge of loudness metering. So we had set standards that we needed to achieve, and this person was playing the game for, I believe, 2 hours a day, really collecting a bunch of data, because there's like so many different environments in the game. They do sound different, so we needed to cover as much as possible. So we had one, sometimes two people in charge of that, and they would just we had some automated scripts to collect that data and kind of filter and transform that data for us. But we had two people in charge of that from QA. Yeah, periodically playing the game and giving us information. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Cool. Well, again, it sounds like a all hands on deck team effort to carry forward this mix in a quite real time and dynamic way. Nice. Yeah, dig in. And maybe in here you'll answer a question that's coming into us through the chat. Was it a long process to set up the Wwise project compliant for Dolby Atmos mixing? And I know that we're just at the tip of this, so feel free to take that in your own time. But
it's coming up. Coming
Yep.
up. Stefan's just going to briefly introduce tools and tech here, and then
Excellent.
I'll talk a little bit about it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It will be part of what we want to talk today about, but also for the people who want to join us in at the GDC at the Wwise booth, we will get a little bit deeper into that. But today there's also enough information for you for you guys.
And answering the question from the chat, all of those sessions that will be at the Audiokinetic booth as part of our audio community theater will be recorded and surfaced via our YouTube channel in the future. So keep an eye peeled for those, including the talk that Stefan is alluding to that will go deeper under the hood. So please take it away.
Cool. Yeah. So I think those are some of the, as we said, those were some of our workflows that helped us to encounter that and that I set up with the team to make that work, to come into this huge, really cool game with this tons of functionality, sounds all over the place. How do you mix that? How do you approach that? And a workflow was important for me. It's first and most about pipelines and workflows, and that was one of the first things. I think that was very successful and gave us the possibility to work properly and really mix it in the way that it came out. In addition to that, there were, of course, while doing that, we needed to get into some tools and techniques and coming up with some stuff that helped us to achieve a mix of a game of that size and those functionalities. Because, as you know, one of the most important things for BG3 and for Larian is that it's the agency, the player. You can decide, you can do anything. You playing your version of this game, which can be absolutely vastly different to other versions that other people are playing. So we need to be prepared for a lot of that stuff. So yeah, that was the thing. So one of those things was I was thinking about I'm a big fan of 3D audio in general. Even in my days at Ubisoft, I was working on some VR projects as well there, and for me it was always super fascinating to work with really nice 3D audio and make that work. So that was always something that fascinated me. And therefore, we were looking into the possibility to go full 3D audio, whatever that means, because there are a lot of terms around, and you can, from spatialized to HRTF, there are so many terms, and some of them get mixed up and done in different ways and different chains. But I was quite happy to have the possibility to do that, because we needed to think about. We needed a Wwise update at that point in time. It was a little bit late. I would have rather. I was discussing that hard. Do we need to have a feature log? Should we really do that? Is that risky? But the point was, we needed to do it. There was other reasons to do it. And then it was, if we do that, we will have the capacity to work with 3D audio. And I was discussing that hard with Matheus and Robin and other team members. And we were like, back and forth, should we do it? And at a certain point, it was, okay, we will do the update anyway. And then let's go for the 3D audio as well, because then we can embrace that. Because I wanted to achieve more clarity and readability in the mix. That was important for me, that we have, because there's so much cool content. But what do you want to focus on? It's not, mixing is not just I throw everything in and then I try to balance it out. It's about decision making as well. So we thought about how can we do some decision making. And the setup that we achieved by using the 3D audio setup was that, hey, we're having a 7.1.4 bed, and hey, we can facilitate that, and it will be all about the endpoint, was something that I was like, that is good, that helps us. And then, of course, companies like Dolby, who having, here's a plugin for a PC, hey, this is on the Xbox, or like PlayStation, hey, here's the Tempest chip, and you can work with that, and this is helping you doing 3D audio. So there are a lot of ways of achieving and using the 3D audio capabilities that Wwise is now providing, and that we now provided. So therefore, we decided that we need to do something drastic at that point in time.
And maybe there's a piece there. There's a piece there, if I can stop you, where what you're really saying is, there's this translation when you're mixing for 3D audio, where you can feel secure that across these different, headphone-based spatialization, whether it's Atmos, Headphone X, Windows Spatial Sound, it's 3D audio on a PS5, and the channel formats, 714, 7151, stereo, right? But by taking your mix to a place where you have the precision afforded by a 3D audio format, now it translates across all these different configurations without much work. You don't have to think as much about that translation across different endpoint configurations.
Yeah, that was really the output is easier. To make that work is way easier than it used to be in prior setups that you needed to do 2019 and so on, the first time that you at least had the possibility to do something similar. But then this is now better, so that helped us a lot. And this was also the reason, like, hey, this is now provided. And cool. I needed to take a decision here, and I was discussing that, as said, with Matheus, with other team members, and we sat down. And what we did as well, we were like, I was reaching out, because I was like, okay, man, Simon, can you help us? So Audiokinetic, like, can we have a chat? And then he was forwarding me to you, Damien. And we took a little bit of a quick 2-hour deep dive, I think, back then, into capabilities and what is, the risks involved. And I did something similar with one or two people from Dolby to hey, what's up there? What do you expect? How should that work? So Alistair, to mention Alistair here. So basically, we had good input and support from people out there. I also asked some other knowledge-able people out there that I was talking about, like, hey, are you using that? How you are doing this on PS5 at the moment? So good thing is a good network and having some people. They helped me, and at the end it was like, okay, you know what? Let's do this, but we have the update now, and now we go full in. And we decided together with Matheus that let's get rid of the complete bus structure, which was a very drastic decision.
I knew that was coming. Yeah.
6 months before shipping, and we said, okay, you know what? We go for this now. Let's get rid of the bus structure, but let's do this in a very planned, organized manner. So we had all of the input. We knew what was coming. We understood what we need to take care of. And then Matheus had the job to prepare that. We were sitting together in our mixing session, like, okay, we don't forget anything, like this is that. Matheus was planning. We had like the flow chart going on. Matheus was noting that down together with Robin and Matthew, our audio coder. Everybody was like, we don't forget, this is good and we can do this. So we were like, okay, that's now the plan, what we want to execute. This is how we set that up now. And I think I hand this over to Matheus. You can talk a little bit more about the rework of me, like, okay, get rid of the bus structure and see you tomorrow when you have implemented the new one. I think it was
I'm already having work flashbacks. Yes.
but it was like really like, okay, we will get rid of the bus structure now, and we will be back in a day, basically, which was also working out because of this awesome preparation of the team.
Nice.
They work together very well. So Matheus.
Yeah, I can give you some background. So before we even made decisions related to how we were going to route things through the 3D spatial audio specific buses, we had to recategorize our sounds because there's just so much content that sometimes the category system that we had wasn't the best. And for something like spatial audio, where you have pass-through main and objects, and each one of those flows is doing something different, it's important to be very, very specific and clear about what a sound is. Right? Like a silly example, but you're not going to group a footstep sound with a crazy magic blast sound. It just doesn't make sense, right? So we needed to be really, really, really specific. And here's the thing. A few days ago, I got a little curious and was thinking, how many buses do we have? So I did a quick Wackle query, and it turns out that we have almost 400 right now. It is a lot. And that's why it took me a very long time, but it was worth it because I gotta be honest, it made mixing so much easier. I found myself spending most of my time in the master mixer hierarchy, which makes a lot of sense. It's in the name, master mixer. That's where I'm mixing, right? So it was great to see that there was a clear separation between implementation, which was in the actor mixer hierarchy in our case, and mixing, which was up there in the master mixer hierarchy, right? So after we went through this whole process of recreating the entire bus structure, that's when we started making decisions about, what is going to bypass 3D spatial audio, pass through, right? What's going to sit in the virtualized beds, the virtual speakers, let's put it like that, which is the main mix, right? Well, what's going to be super well positioned and going to use up audio objects, right? Like how can we now make those decisions? That's when we started, assigning things to these buses. So things bypassing, for example, the 3D spatial audio system here. We had music. We had like normal 2D music in the game. Ambience backgrounds, interface sounds, menu clicks, notifications. When you enter a new region in Baldur's Gate, there's a nice horn-like sound that plays. That's in pass-through. Narrator. Actually, the narrator originally, it's a very interesting story. Originally, it was in the pass-through, but we moved it to something else coming up. We had a very cool idea. I'll talk about it. So that's not true anymore. Point and click sound. So when you're controlling your character and you click around and it says, "My boots have seen everything," or "Time for some bloody business," those cool Baldur's Gate lines. Those lines are also passed through. It's kind of like it's in your head kind of thing. It's coming from you. You're the character, right? So it made sense for us. Cool. Then for the virtualized beds, we have the ambient emitters, so like fire, some weird magic stuff coming, like aura beams kind of thing coming from the environment. Statuses, so if you're on fire kind of thing, the sound of the fire. Those sounds, yes, they have to be well positioned, but they don't have to be super well positioned, which is why we decided not to use up audio objects for those sounds, right? Movement sounds as well. It made sense to not use audio objects for them, like footsteps. This is not like a competitive first-person shooter. You don't need to be super precise with footstep sounds, for example. And they do happen a lot in Baldur's Gate, so we didn't want to use up all of the audio objects we had, which I think were 15. I think it's up to 15 in our case. Yeah, so movement sounds as well. Items, so picking up items, dropping items in the world, destroying items. All of those sounds were also going through the main flow.
And there's something, I'll back you up to that main mix description for a second, because, you know, this idea of putting your footsteps and Foley sounds into the main mix as opposed to an audio object, again, dealing with limitations. You don't really want things to move between audio objects and the main mix. You want to make sure that they preserve whatever spatial location they have. And if you have a footstep one time, arrive with one level of precision, and the next time, as part of the main mix, you may have some, incoherence with where that is positioned. And so I think it was smart to make those choices about what goes where.
Yeah, thank you. It was a very substantial part of the process. There was a lot of talk about managing the amount of voices that we're going to audio objects. It was part of the challenge for sure. Yeah. And yeah, speaking of objects, here we go. What did we do turn into audio objects? Anything that was super important. So here are some examples. Any cinematic specific sounds, like if there's a VFX that's specific to a certain cinematic, because it's I don't know, maybe Raphael, our big demon boss in Baldur's Gate, is using up some special ability in the cinematic. That should be an audio object so that it sounds better. Spells and actions, anything related to combat, for example, it made sense to send to audio objects. And at first, actually, we thought, oh yeah, that like maybe we're gonna run out of objects because combat sounds, it's a lot of them. But it's a turn-based game, so that didn't happen. So fortunately, it was a very easy decision to make in this case. Yeah. And then for voice, any dialogue, like actual words, gameplay related things, people shouting when you use a spell, and you have your voice component, for example. Instrument components as well, that include that in here. But if you play as Bard and you use a spell, the Bard's playing their instrument, right? That's also going through the audio objects flow.
Cool.
Yeah, and a bunch of other things. Essentially, anything that was important was going to the audio objects. And because of the turn-based nature of the game, we didn't run into issues with us running out of objects, right? And let me go back here. I mentioned that originally the narrator was going through the pass-through bus, right? And therefore bypassing all of this system. But I was with Stefan in a mixing session. Stefan, I don't remember if that was online. I think it was when we were in the studio, right? And I think you said, yeah, it would be cool if we kind of like think of this game as if it's like happening on a board, and the narrator is a person like coming from above, right? So we actually just
game,
yeah.
right?
So I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So let's just pan the narrator voice up and see what happens. And when we play the game, I was like, yeah, this is epic. It's actually it's out of the box. It sounds good, like yeah, like it may sound like a weird idea, but it totally worked.
It's really about this tabletop idea to really just say, hey, this is the narrator, the person, the dungeon master, because at the end we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and the person is telling from top down to, hey, this is now what's happening. Yeah, Matheus.
We had some other interesting exceptions as well. So the dice roll, when you have to, I don't know, pass a charisma check. we also panned it in a way. We did automation, right? So that was originally like a HUD/UI sound, right? So we're like, yeah, if that goes through the pass-through and you're playing with headphones, you can't really send things up and around you, right? So okay, let's maybe send that through the main mix. And when you throw a dice, it goes from above down and it bounces around, kind of thing. So that was another cool exception that we encountered, and yeah, it
You're using
sounded
some
really
emitter
neat.
automation when that happens, so
Yeah,
that
yeah, it was 3D listener with automation in Wise for
yeah,
positioning.
yeah,
Yeah,
randomizing those paths to get different shake rolls of the dice. Ah,
yeah,
what a
we
cool trick!
handcrafted some cool movements, and it randomizes, just picks a random one. Yeah,
Yeah, sweet.
exactly.
Ah,
Yeah, if I can remember other exceptions, I'll bring them up. But those were the two coolest ones for me.
and these would be, you'd experience this in a headphone based spatialization when you've got 3D audio on, or Windows spatial sound enabled on a PC, and or a 714, a channel based system with height channels in your living room. This would be this is be when you'd hear these effects played out in real time
Exactly.
in
Yep,
the experience. Great.
cool, cool.
And
There in
and
this
the
diagram. Oh,
nice thing
sorry. Go
is that
ahead,
you
Stefan.
still the nice thing is still that you have the down mix that works quite nice, because we in this case we did not alter this, so this is really still the narrator is in the height speakers, but the height speakers getting down mixed properly, and that works just fine. So we don't have any additional setup, because we do have different setups for surround stereo, which we will talk in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But this one is just the down mix of the setup.
That's that
Yes.
transparency, right? Being able to author it once, mix it once, and have it translate across these different configurations. Nice.
Yeah, it was really consistent for sure. Yeah. In this diagram, there are a couple buses down here. This is just for illustration purposes, just so you know that, for example, we had a mono mix down bus, and that one was for accessibility. We did support the game being down mixed to mono. That was basically bypassing the system. Also, all of our side chain processing, all of the metering was also done, apart from the spatial audio system. Cool. So getting into the second tech/tool topic here, what Stefan was mentioning before, endpoint differentiation. We noticed that sometimes some stuff that we were listening to in stereo wouldn't really sound the same in surround. It makes sense if you're playing in a room, versus playing with headphones, which are basically attached to your head, super close to your ears. Inevitably, it will sound different, right? Especially in terms of loudness. The mix down is good, but it won't always be perfect, right? Because you want control over that as well sometimes. So in this case, we noticed a few opportunities. For example, with the music, when playing with a surround system, we made it so that it actually pans to the back a little bit. So it's not just like front there. It's kind of like it's around you a little bit, right? With the ambience, we just did a little bit of manual volume tuning just so it wasn't overwhelming. Because when you have more speakers, it's more like you have more bandwidth in terms of volume. So we let the ambience come up a little bit more. But when playing that in stereo, it was a little bit too loud sometimes. So we decided to, force it down a bit more when playing in stereo. Similar for spells as well. We noticed that when playing in stereo, sometimes the spells would be a bit too loud as well. So it was very, very similar situation for both ambience and spells. And yeah, we did a bunch of other minor tweaks across the project, but there was a lot of situations like this where we noticed that something could be a little quieter usually in stereo. Yeah.
Because you want to play to the strengths of whatever the format is, and you don't want to detract from the other ways that people listen.
For me, this because the term was something that I brought in, is the endpoint differentiation, because I called it differently prior, but it was always for me when we're doing a 5.1, 7.1, and we have the capability, because I'm coming from a time where a lot of the developers wanted me to do, hey, stereo because surround. Nobody got that, don't do that, don't invest in that. But I still always provided it because it was most of the time possible to do so without a lot of additional issues. But I always made it the way that I have a clear mix for stereo and the possibility, because when we have Bobby's music, it's a good example here. So Bobby's music is just awesome, and we have it there in front. It's left, right, it's up in front. That works. When you go in surround, why using those nice additional speakers that you have, those places? So therefore, for me, it was always the thing that I want to hear this, like I want to be surrounded by the music, which also gives you a little bit more possibility for what's going on in front of you, so you can work better with left, right, and push the music so that you are involved in the music. That was the idea for surround. So you have the possibility to be in the center of the music and give it more space. But of course, if you do that and then you do a proper, straightforward down mix, even back then, it was always the issue that you're mixing down the same waveform to the same waveform. And this is always bad. So you should not do this because of interference, and it sounds thin. That we figure out in the API that, hey, what is plugged in? What kind of setup do we now play back on? Therefore, if you see it's a stereo setup, make a proper right left mix. And if you go if you go for the for surround mix, then do the surround stuff.
Right, we lost your
I
video.
just the screen was breaking up.
Yeah, we lost your video, but you all
was it breaking?
Oh, you're back.
You're back.
Back again.
Your dialogue came through. We lost
out.
your video, but I think I think
there was something going on. I don't know what happened. I was just also seeing lag. So summing up, that was super important for me, so that we facilitate that and we work with those speakers, because I don't think surround speakers are just for, hey, there's a little bit of environment in the background and therefore we are good. My approach for surround is, in games, I think it's even different than in a movie, because in a movie you're still working for a theater, and the surround stuff is an effect. It's an addition that you use often. When I'm going to the cinema, I experience it often that way, that it's used for specific moments. I personally think for a game that is interactive and where you can work, you experience this 3D world, how awesome is it to just use that and really go for a full-blown surround mix in terms of rear speakers and environment. In rear speakers, for me, are always the same volume as in front speakers. It's like you are in the middle of that mix, and I really want to work with that. So I'm not completely going with the regular mix that you would do for movies back then when I was working on movies, where you use it a little bit to open up a little bit and make it a little bit more surround. But for me, it's really, this is the full experience. And especially when somebody has, it's the Eldritch Blast in hand, and they turn around and they're now behind you. You should hear that. It should be there, and it can be there. And the cool thing is, you don't need to to mix that down in rear, I think, because that is what often happens, that in a movie it get mixed down, because of course something that is happening behind you is not that important anymore and would distract from the thing. But in a game, you want to know that someone is behind you and having Eldritch Blast ready for whatever, so can fight with you and will be there. So for me, it's all about using those surround channels in almost the same volume, and just as the positioning. So it's all about positioning. It's all about understanding what's around you in the game. And I really encourage that in general. Also, like environment, small bits and pieces in environment. Robert took care that we have water drops that coming from the top and falling down, and they happen behind you. And you can turn around and you're in this full environment. And it's not about just like, hey, there's a little bit background. It's something that you need to read and understand, and that you need to feel. So therefore, for me, the whole endpoint differentiation is a cool additional option to the regular down mix, because it gives you more control about those two situations without having some negative effects on the front.
Yeah, and with headphone spatialization, I feel like the accessibility to that experience where you do have a depth of field that stretches 360 degrees around you using headphones with spatialization. Well, now it's not just making sure that the speakers are in the right place in your living room. It's, simply putting a pair of headphones on and receiving this rich 360-degree mix that you have custom tailored and hand tailored. When we talk about some of these differentiations between stereo, surround, the creative decisions you're making. Question coming in from the chat. Are you doing that with RTPCs and states? Are those being applied on buses or on individual sounds? Like, how are you? um, you know, how are you architecting that?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So that was using game syncs. Yes, if I recall correctly, it was an RTPC. So we basically used the RTPC as an enumerator kind of thing. So 0 was mono, 1 stereo kind of thing. I don't know if those were the exact values, but it was essentially an enumeration, right?
Yep.
And I worked with the audio programmer to write some code that basically checks to see what's the current channel configuration, and based on that information, it sets the game sync. And yes, we did do that on the buses because we wanted to do as much as possible of the mix in the master mixer hierarchy, so that all of the work was centralized. So yeah, that was with RTPCs in buses. There were a few exceptions, but mostly up there in the master mix hierarchy.
Gotcha. And I'll throw it back to another question from the chat. How did you manage or troubleshoot all the interactions between buses, assets? What was your process for, picking through things to understand?
Well, it's a lot of profiling, really. So if in a session we were hoping to, let's say, mix all the ambience for the Shadow Cursed lens, we would go in there, start a capture, play, and if we heard something weird, we would start muting some things, so removing some things, more of like a subtractive approach. And if that didn't work, I would then solo instead to try to find the thing that's sounding weird, right? And once we found the issue, we would just, depending on what the issue is, identify potential solutions, pick one. If it's a quick fix, we would fix it right away. If not, create a task, send it to someone else, kind of thing. Yeah, but it was a lot of profiling, like 100% every single time I was tweaking anything mixing related, I had the profiler open. I even mentioned that to you, Damien. I
Yeah.
have a 3-screen setup, and I have Wwise kind of like a DAW, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's taking up all of my screens. Usually the game in the middle screen, of course, and I have like a bunch of profiling and
Perfect.
profiler tools and some other stuff open as well.
Like a spaceship, basically.
Yeah, Starship Enterprise for sure. And I think there's something really compelling about that because being able to zoom in, like you said, sometimes you get your ears on it, you understand what it is, and you can take care of it right there. Sometimes these things are more systemic, and in order to solve for them, it's not necessarily a real-time operation you can just handle while you're mixing. And so being able to carry those things back to design or development and address them in the right moment. It's a deep hole that you can fall into.
And also, like, having redone the entire categorization for the game, because you mentioned the word systemic, right? We basically made our entire bus structure systemic, so honestly it wasn't hard to find things at all.
Yeah.
So if I was playing the game and I thought, oh, I think there's a status that sounds weird, I would go to the status bus. If I know exactly what it is, solo the thing, status. Okay, it's a status, but I hear a few statuses, but now I think it's the fire one. Okay, now there's a status fire bus. It's like every status that sounds like fire.
Cool.
I can solo that one. There you go. It's in there, kind of thing. And then I could go to the profiler and I could do some filtering to check out what sounds are going through that buzz, and yeah, it's kind of like zooming in gradually
nice.
towards the problem, right?
I also think it is super important to something that I always try to discuss with team members and in projects is to to use the mixing hierarchy different than your actor mixer hierarchy, because the one is they can have different purposes. I do not even tell you what to do and how to do that, but the point is reflecting it in the mixing hierarchy again is just like doubling it up and having the same functionality. But you can be smart about that. You can have a type-based actor mixer hierarchy and a functionality-based mixing hierarchy, or vice versa. It really depends on your game and how you want to use that. But that is a way of having more access to problem solving and understanding how to use that stuff. Yeah.
Well, and I think for folks out there who are approaching big mixes or even smaller mixes, hearing some of these techniques that you use at the mix phase and how you will reach for these buses in order to, understand what's happening. Well, I think it can help people shape their hierarchies on the way to the mix. Obviously, you arrived after reshaping things in the way that you imagined. And yeah, again, I really value how you arrived with what you needed to be able to identify and solve these problems as they came up. And I'm assuming that some folks are going to get great value out of that. So thank you for that.
Sure.
And that really goes a long way to answering another question that came up in the chat about 400 buses all at the same time. But I think that I think there's a clear method to the madness there. So nice.
Yeah. Oh,
I
can't
think I
hear.
got muted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, cool. No, yeah, that was definitely a pattern. We were not just blindly creating buses, I promise. A lot of it had to do with workflow as well. So we had, for example, a lot of Soundcaster sessions, a lot of mixing sessions in Wwise as well, just so we could easily work with interactions, because a lot of mixing is identifying interactions that are problematic, right? So for example, if you have a spell that's too bassy and you're in the Shadow Curse lands and maybe there's a bassy layer in the ambience, those are going to mask each other, right?
Yeah.
So we had like very specific, for example, mixing sessions that would help us identify interactions between different categories of sounds, right? And in those mixing sessions, we would only have like the buses that were relevant to the topic that we were mixing, essentially.
Gotcha. So some of those topics, give me some ideas. Like you mentioned, for instance, magic and ambience. That might be one pass where you're listening very intently to those two areas. Are there other common scenarios?
Ambience and music was another one, because they're constantly playing. In Baldur's Gate, sometimes the music takes a little break, which was a decision that we made to let the ambience shine a little bit more. But when we had both of them playing, they were usually fighting each other in a bad way.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we had to address that as well. That's actually the next topic, so I think this is a good moment to, pivot into this.
Okay, great.
I was going to work with the first example, which is spells, but I can talk more about music and ambience later, but it's very similar to this.
Great.
So at first, there was a lot of mixing being done with volume manipulations, voice volume, bus volume, output bus volume, whatever. Those were not doing the trick for us. It was not helping much. And eventually, I was joking with my coworkers, and I was like, the game's starting to sound like an EDM trap. EDM track. Everything is just like bouncing around, right? Like you have this thing that ducks this other thing, and this thing ducks these other three things, and these other things actually duck the first thing, and suddenly nothing makes sense anymore. So we realized that a lot of the problem wasn't really the loudness of the assets. It had more to do with masking. It had to do with what frequencies were too much at certain points in time, right? Here's an example. So I made this little diagram, and I'll go over this. Can you see my cursor when I move it around? You can, right?
Yeah.
I will use it.
Helpful.
Then. Good. Okay, good. Example number one. I have two examples for this. I will show this in Wwise as well if the viewers are interested. I have a little mock Wwise project that I made with some spells in there. Cool. But the first example is removing bass from ambience when detecting bass in spells. So it is a form of sidechain, as the title here implies. So let's go over this diagram and it will basically explain what's going on here. So you have the spells down here. It's a bunch of sounds. In this case, we have 12 sounds. They get routed to the spells audio bus. Here you have also the ambience audio bus. Those are going through the core chain. The core chain for us is basically the chain that actually is audible. You can hear the sounds going through that chain, right? As you can see here, it goes to the system output. Here you have this little speaker icon emoji that I put here. Let's make it obvious. But cool. From the spells audio bus, we send to the spells aux bus, which is going through the side chain. The side chain, it does not reach the system in terms that we have a couple things that make it silent. That actually makes it extreme. I think it totals to minus 293 dB. So there's no way this is going to be audible at all. It's really meant just for metering. And for example, in here in this aux bus spells that's receiving audio signals from the spells audio bus, this aux bus has an EQ, low pass filter. So we're only allowing the bassy parts of the spells to go in. That bassy information goes to a meter. The meter will check how much bass we have. We send that to an RTPC via the meter. It's a built-in feature of Wwise. For those who are not familiar with this, you can turn loudness information into RTPC values, which is great. And then from this RTPC, we can use it to control the gain of, for instance, low shelf in an EQ, which is being applied to the ambience. There you go. So if I need my bass from the spell to cut through, but it's not cutting through because the ambience has too much bass, for example, this can fix it. It's a valid, pretty easy to set up fix, you know?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Great illustration.
For me, this was super important that we have those EQ. I always told Matheus that I need this EQ-based ducking because basically what this replicates for me is normally when you do a mix for a piece of music, you always do frequency juggling. You need to find places for your instruments for certain things, and they have a certain home basically, so that they cutting through the mix and they are clearly audible. If you just throw stuff on each other, you will end up with muddy mixes, with mixes that you do not enjoy that much. So you need to provide clarity. This is already a hard job in a good piece of music to do that. You know, not a lot of people really, you know, like going deep into that, and it's something that you need to do. And volume is not cutting it, you know, because if you go just for ducking, you end up with yes, that is one thing, but you get rid of all the frequencies. And why should you if you do not use those frequency ranges? But you need to have a space for this, you know. So therefore, this frequency juggling was the thing. But we have an interactive media, as all of you know, and the interactive media is very different in that regard, especially one where you give the player all of the choices in the world of like doing whatever you want at any given point in time. So therefore, you need to be prepared for having a frequency ducking or for a frequency juggling provided properly. And Matheus came up with that solution. And I was super happy because this was exactly what we needed. And it helped us so much on so many places, because now, as Matheus described, if you have a spell and it is powerful, you can go full in with that spell. You know, it can be powerful, it can be bassy, it can have a lot of energy, and it takes away what it needs, but it still gives you the environment. You don't need to duck away everything. You just need to duck away the frequencies that you need for that moment. And that is also facilitated in so many other places in the game, and that helps us to keep the game readable and understandable and not overwhelming, basically.
Because on a moment-to-moment basis, you want to carve out those frequencies. You want to create those opportunities for what's important to be heard, be present, be full frequency. In the case of the spell, you know, scooping out bass frequencies of the ambience. Well, it's kind of important that you feel impacted by that spell in that moment. Ambient bass frequencies, those can take a back seat for a minute, because what's important, and I think what the role of mixing in that moment to moment way is making sure that the player is experiencing what is important at the time. So yeah, great illustration of it. And yeah, like the way to it is a little more convoluted than we would like, and we recognize that the tools are in the toolbox to do this kind of real-time side chaining, multi-band processing, and we would like to imagine a better way in the future that brings it closer to what you would expect from an accessibility standpoint. So
That's now up to
Please
you.
do.
while it's great, it's great to be able to do it.
I came up with a way to like set this up in an automated manner with scripts, but if still like having a plugin would be nice, to do this, that'd be cool. Yeah, for sure.
We'll find our way towards it in time, especially as folks have continued to work with this kind of toolkit for it. I think it helps us understand a very clear path towards what people want, what people need, and what we can deliver in the future. So yeah, great illustration. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have a second example with something similar, a little more complex. So in this example, we have increasing the amount of bass in spells that lack bass. So essentially kind of synthesizing bass if there's no bass, or if there's bass already in there, you can use an EQ. So let's take a look at this one. So same thing, down here you have the spell sounds. Those get routed to another bus. We have an extra audio bus here this time. It's spells pre, and this is pre-processing or pre-effects. There's a reason we have two buses with essentially the same name. It's to avoid a feedback loop. We'll see that in a little bit. So we have spells pre, that goes to spells, and that's basically the core chain we have here. So we can hear sounds going through this chain. We do also have the side chain here, which is not audible. It's silent. It's just for metering. Same thing from the other example. And what's going on here is from the spells pre audio bus, we're sending to the spells audio bus, sorry, aux bus in this case. We still have the EQ because in this case we're dealing with bass. And again, by the way, a quick aside, you may use a band pass as well if you don't want to get like the entire low end of something. If you want to be a little more atomic, you can. That would be a band pass filter instead. But anyway, moving on here. So we have this EQ with a low pass filter, making sure that we're measuring just the low end of the spell. That information gets sent to the RTPC, and then you can use a harmonizer or equalizer to add bass, with the RTPC essentially controlling the amount of extra bass, right? You can also do the opposite, by the way. If something has too much bass, like you can do that to like you can have this measurement going on to actually decrease the amount of bass, right? Which would be kind of like a multi-band compressor kind of thing, right? So the opposite here would be valid as well. And we also did that. This is just one of the many examples that we have in Baldur's Gate with this technique. But yeah, with this RTPC, which measures the low end of spells, you can use that to, in this other bus, spells, not spells pre, in this upper one here, to create bass or add bass if there's already bass in there, right? Again, going back to this feedback loop, if you didn't have this, if I didn't have that bus here, I would get actually a feedback loop where if I'm sending from spells instead of spell spree, let's say I'm detecting that there's not enough bass, I would increase the amount of bass, right? But then I'm actually changing the signal that I'm routing, right? So that wouldn't quite work well. It wouldn't be an accurate representation of the amount of bass that's in the original sound, right? That's why we need this other child bus in here. Cool.
What a sweet maneuver to fill in again. Like here's another scenario where you've got these holes, or you want to, in this moment-to-moment way, reinforce what's happening and getting information about the spells, using that to reinforce these frequency pockets and and really just carry forward the impact of these moments. That's a sweet setup and a great strategy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can move on to Wise, and we can actually see how to set this up in Wise quickly.
There's some
That's cool.
folks that are into that in the chat for sure.
Yeah, should we do that? Yeah, let's move on then.
Go for it, Matheus.
Yeah, let me do this. So here is our mock Wise project. So this is a super trimmed down representation of the Baldur's Gate Wise project. This is not an accurate representation, but it is close enough for our purposes. It's good enough for what we need to do here today. So I'll just show you what I have in here. It's just a few spells. I have some ambience as well from the Hag boss fight. Good boss fight, by the way. I like that one. Here's some music as well for the same scenario, the Hag boss fight in the game. So here's the music. Well, there's ambience as well. And we got some spells. You're aiming. Prepare the spell. You cast. And eventually get an impact. Same for the other ones. And this one. Well, notice that they sound very different, right? So if we get, let's compare the loops here, for example. I hear a solid bass in there. Not a lot of high end. Less bass. I hear some mid-high. I'll trust my ears in this one. This one has some icy textures with more high end up there, right? So you can't just rely on volume in this case. You can't say, oh yeah, if spells are loud, decrease volume of ambience. It's not really going to work the best because they are loud in different ways. They sound different, right? So in this case, what we can do, let's go with example number one. Let's have maybe ambience and music equalized based on, you know, some measurements we're going to do on these sounds. So let's go to my bus here. So I have the spell section down here in the actor makes a hierarchy. That's already properly routed to my spell free bus here. Here we go. And I already set up a side chain in here. So let me just collapse these so it's a little easier to visualize this. So main objects. Here we go, pass through side chain. So side chain, I have side chain spells. So let's go here. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually, let's make sure that it's in fact silent, right? Because I mentioned, well, the side chain needs to be silent. It's a silent processing bus, right? Notice that I do have output bus volume set to -200 here. Some might find this a little bit too radical. That's really up to you. Another way you can do this is if you don't want to really do like -200 in here is you can set a game plugin and just make it super quiet. That also works. Either is fine. Hey, cool. So I'll leave it at that. That's definitely going to be silent. So we know that this will not affect the mix actively. So I can go in here and now send to this bus. Sorry, wrong one. Oh, that's oh yeah, that's an audio bus. My bad. I need forgot the aux bus. So let's go side spells and let's measure the low end. So come up with a naming convention here, 2 underscores for what band it is. Let's say low. Cool. So how about let's get one for the full spectrum as well. Full. This full. So what I'm gonna do, you know what? Let's also do high. Why not? Let's do all of them. Why not?
I love this. I love where this is going. This is like a cooking show.
Yeah, let's do the entire thing. Yeah. Why not? So there we go. So let's send. So usually when I'm doing something like this, where I need a lot of information from the sound, I don't do all of the sends from up here, by the way. I don't do this. Because if I need to send this to like a reverb or some other sort of processing, I'm running out of space in here. So what I usually do is I send to the full spectrum one, and then the full spectrum aux bus sends to the other two. So I have the same signal going to the other ones, right? So
Yeah.
a quick workaround there because I ran into issues where I ran out of sends, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta find a way. So this was the way. Anyway, so let's do the full spectrum measurement first. So how do we set up a basic sidechain, not band specific? We just go no effects. Let me put the meter down here. Usually I have the meter as the last effect. It's just a personal workflow thing. No, default custom is fine. Here we go. Let me get some sounds going. There we go. Ah, there we go. Nice. It's working. Now I need an RTPC because yeah, sure, we got the readings there, but there's no way to use that information right now. So I have another project explorer down here with game parameters. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new RTPC. I'll kind of match the name of the bus so it's easier to understand what's going on. And there we go, output game parameter. Usually what I do is I make sure that whatever the range of the RTPC is matches the range of the meter in here. That makes the most sense for me. So I'll go in here. And this is in full scale, of course. So no positive numbers. And default is as silent, as close to silence as possible. Cool. Let's see. Meter. Cool. Let's test this out. Nice. So let's get proof of concept here, and let's see that. Let's see if I can get rid of the music entirely with this RTPC, right? So, just by the way, let me know if it's too loud. I think it's okay. But...
Working. It's working.
Cool. Great. Both at the same time. Let me see if I can now go to the music and set up just basic volume. We're not gonna deal with EQ for now. Let's go here and. Where's my music? Should be passed through music. Let me make sure it's routed correctly, right? Aha, it's not. I can do that because this was just a mock-up. There you go. Cool. And in here, how about it we do output bus volume? So we go add RTPC, game parameters. Here's the full spectrum version of the thing. This would be a bug right now. This means no music. That's not what I want. I want the opposite. Yeah, let's just go hardcore here so I can test this and see if it actually works.
Yeah,
There we go.
curves.
Oh, yeah, it is working because I'm setting the RTPC in the window manually, right? And yeah. So how about a connect? Well, volume working. All good. Is that the best? No, of course I'm choosing crazy values here, but we can make this better. Notice that even if I choose a reasonable value, oh yeah, sure, it will do the job, will carve through the mix, but it's a complex game. There's so many sounds playing. This will not, necessarily work well. So let's see here. Let's try this one. Yeah, notice that it helps, but there's a better way. By the way, totally fine to combine volume and EQ. We did do that a few times, but let's also add the EQ in here. And for now, I'm gonna make sure the volume is not changing so we can audit just the EQ changes. Okay, cool. So I have the full spectrum measurement going on. That's working fine. I will now duplicate these two RTPCs that I have down here. And I'll say this one is for low end, this one is for high end. My naming convention is broken. Very good. Cool. So let's go with low first, because that was what I had in my example. So we're gonna go in here, EQ. Gonna deactivate these bands because I'm not using them, and I'll say low pass. I'll do what I usually do, which is band pass. I don't want to measure the entire low end. This will be like a specific area. By the way, usually when I'm mixing and I have a lot of time, I try to identify like specifically what band I need. I'm just gonna kind of like ballpark it here, but usually it's more of like a longer process. You want to spend some time in it and pick a good number, right? But I will say 300, 0.5, so it's a bit wider. Okay, I think I'm good with this. Cool. So let's measure just that band, and let's go to meter default. Oh, that is correct. So now, yeah, notice that it will be probably much quieter than the other meter. So let's go to the full meter first. Here's what we have. All the way up. By the way, don't worry about this clipping because remember, this is silent anyway, and the RTPC clips at 0. So this here doesn't matter at all. Like what we truly care about is the output here. The input, not so important in this case if it clips. Cool. But notice that it is loud. But if you go to, for example, low, it's not clipping anymore, right? Because we have a filter. So that's working. Let's go ahead and kind of do the same thing here for the high and bus, just so we already have it set up. Just gotta make sure I swap two things, the RTPC, because now we're in high, so this should say high, and the EQ, instead of 300, should be something definitely much higher. I don't know. I'm gonna choose a random number for now. If it doesn't work, we'll change it. Maybe that's a little too high. Sure, 10K, why not? That works. Nice. So we have the setup done. So we have the RTPCs that we can work with. We have the buses doing the readings. Now this is when mixing truly begins. You have the tools you need, right? So I can go, for example, to the music in pass-through music, and I can have an EQ in here. Of course, in a real project, you might want to have some share sets and stuff, but I'm just going to say default custom here. Let's see. I want to, let's go below shelf. What value did I pick for low? I can't remember. 300.
300.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's go in here and let's say there's a little bit of a roll off. So let's just say 50. And the gain is what you want to control in this case. So at RTPC, gain parameters. So yeah, we're measuring the low end of the spells in this case. And this would be a bug. This right now means if this spell doesn't have much bass, the music should also not have a lot of bass. That is not true. Should be the opposite. There we go. Yeah, when dealing with EQ stuff, the default curve will not work. For volume, it totally works. For EQ, you have to invert the curve. Yeah, flip it. Let's try something hardcore for now, just so we know that it works. So let's do what we had before. And this is music. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm setting this manually. I forgot. So the implementation is working. Cool. I'm gonna start a profiler capturing Wwise just in case I need to debug something. And great job. We didn't lose a lot of power in the music. Of course, I chose a crazy value, but yeah, no volume manipulation at all. I mean, to a specific band, sure, but in terms of changing voice volume, bus volume, etc., we didn't really need that in this case. So let's choose something more reasonable here. Oh, by the way, a little trick. If you want to add a threshold, just add a new point in the graph. And you say, oh yeah, like it doesn't start doing anything until loudness reaches -30 kind of thing. And then you have a little nice threshold system here. I'll just not have that for simplicity's sake. Yeah, let's see. I'm waiting for more. Yeah, there we go. Smooth.
What a
It's
great
very
way.
hard to know. Yeah, it's like hard to notice, but you feel better about it. It's like, oh, there's something going on there, and it's good, right? You don't hear the movement, but it works.
Right. Gets those bass frequencies out of the way in this example and just gives that spell a chance to shine without affecting the music in the way that, you know, simple volume side-chaining would make for that pumping that you were talking about, or the kind of imbalance of imbalance of the mix, really.
Yeah. That's it, really. Cool. I think, do we have time for the second example? Like, I can show the other thing in here. We do already have the sidechain set up. It's just a matter of adding some effects. Yeah.
I'd also mention, you know, you showed the how to dial in a threshold as part of the RTPC, and as part of the game parameter, you could also use interpolation to author a kind of slow release as well.
I also like doing that in the meter itself sometimes, in the dynamics.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but either is fine, really. Yeah, they essentially do the same.
You have a lot of
Yeah.
places where you can make those choices again, just to get the right transitions for
Mhm.
each of these different scenarios. Nice. Yeah, I mean, folks are loving this. There was a question, sorry, a comment of when I'm mixing and have a lot of time. This was a laugh cry moment. Yeah, congratulations for having that time. It's something that,
Yeah.
Stefan, from your perspective, maybe between these examples, do you want to talk about how you make sure that there's time for this mix process?
Yeah. First of all, I would love to point out and go back to what we said in the beginning. That's the beauty of having an expert, having somebody of a knowledge worker that really knows what he's doing and let him shine. That's one of those best examples. The audio team and here at Larian is full of those people, and we have a lot of super talented people, and that is exactly what makes all of this work. And then the biggest scope, of course, is the whole Larian audio team, the whole Larian team working together and having this collaboration with the other departments, because Larian is very much a team-based approach, and we're working together on so many levels and doing that together. So it's all about the collaboration here, and this is how you get really good stuff, by letting people work on their ideas and bring them to shine. I just needed to mention, hey, I really need a frequency ducking because there's so much stuff going on, and we need to find out how we can frequency juggle. And Matheus was sitting down for 2 days, came back to me with that in the mixing session, and was like, "How about that?" And I'm like, God damn it, that's good. Thank you, man. Like that's exactly what I expect from team members and from experts. How do they get the time to do that? I mean, on a regular BG3 is there was a lot of stuff going on. Did Matheus have enough time to do everything that I would love him to do? No, but this is game development. This is all of the time. There is time pressure, and you need to find the right bits and pieces over the course of time. And I think it's important for me as an audio director / manager in that regard, plus the people like our audio project managers that we have as well. Shout out to Pauline in that one, and Alec. They taking care that we have the right task and the right possibility. So it's all about prioritizing your task, taking care that the right stuff is worked on, and this decision is something that in my perspective should always be done by directors, the prioritization of what is important right now to achieve the vision. When we go back to that vision, this decision making should be done by us. But then the handing over is all about this priority, and the way to find there, in between. That's the one that Matheus can do. And normally, the team members do the estimation of their tasks. This means Matheus can sit down and say, "Hey, Stefan, frequency juggling. Okay, I need to think about that 2 days, or a week, whatever. But this is about Matheus finding a way and telling us what he needs, and then we need to give him the room to explore and figure that stuff out. That is basically how I think we should, how you should find a way to give your team members the time to doing the stuff that that is important to you, and by prioritizing correctly and not let them work on stuff that is not that important. They should have the time to do that. Yeah. I think
Nice.
that is
That was a great description of audio direction, audio production, right? It's like it is a moment to moment conversation with the people who are working or tasked with, the different pieces that fall into place during the development cycle. So, really well articulated. Yeah, and I guess the fact that we arrived here at the end of the rainbow with Matheus saying, when I had all of this time to do this, it worked. You had the time to develop these systems, and your expertise navigating this project. Well, it probably took less time than you imagined, or maybe it's easier now that you know how to do it.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah,
do
like
make it
Stefan
look
said,
easy. Yeah.
oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, like as Stefan mentioned, this was planned. Like, it was a problem that we identified. We brainstormed some potential solutions together. Then I did some research, recorded tons of videos, sent to the team. Hey, what do you think of this solution, kind of thing. And once we got, a consensus that, yeah, this is the way to go, that's when I started actually mixing using this, right? So this wasn't like sporadic. It wasn't me in the mixing session. I'm like, oh yeah, let me try this thing. No, no, no. It was a planned step in pre-mixing. I put it like that. We
Right.
were developing the tools and identifying the techniques that we needed before actually getting to the mix stage, right?
So, if it's okay, I'm going to dig into that just a little bit, right? Like, how much of this was in the hands of sound designers? Were they reaching for any of these RTPCs during the process? And maybe a second question there is, were sound designers going back to their original sound design sessions and maybe doing some things to support these systems or to compensate?
I think the second one, I will quickly answer then, Matthias. But when I came in and we decided, okay, let's now get really into the bits and pieces, into the specifics of the mix. There was the point in time where I was like, okay, you know what, we will be at the point where we need to do basically tabula rasa on the bus structure. Let's do the same with the files. And there was basically 2 weeks of giving the whole team the possibility to sit down and discuss where we want to have which in loudness ranges, where certain groups of sounds are living and how they behave. And they did reworks of that and did an overall leveling in general, so that we can really start, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. This was not the case in that in here, because the people already did a great job and there was a lot of stuff already at the right spot. It was about bits and pieces, it was just about like now giving us for the mix the possibility to work properly. So this was just nuances. While I also experienced in my life that you come in there and there's like this super loud sound, and some faders are almost like minus whatever, and you go there and you have all of this super different sounding. But I think really important is that you already have the right assets, and that you start with the assets, and the assets in the integration should be there. I would even say that that in general it is about that this is something that in general you should have a definition of what the task for sound designer means. Basically, how should you implement it, and in which loudness range the sound should live, and only when at that point, when it is integrated and already on the right range in the mix. I'm not saying it needs to be super precise, but it needs to be in the range in the mix. It is part of the integration process. You cannot put a sound in and then like, hey, at the end I'm doing the mix. You should always account for having the mix done while you do it. And that is one of the important things that we're taking care of here.
Yeah, I think what you unlock there is this idea that mixing is not what happens at the end of the project. It is a constant piece of the puzzle falling into place with each sound delivered to the game that isn't done until you've assessed it in context.
I think it is really something that got dragged over, I would say, from movie mixing, because you have this, it's a linear approach. It's a it's hey, now you have this time to do the mix. We are done. The edit is done. We are pick locked now, and now you can mix, and now I can work on that stuff. We're working from the beginning with our colleagues, with the team. So this is the cool thing that I always loved about game audio. This was one of the reasons when I understood what game audio is capable of, I think like 2004, 5, and I was like seeing the first thing with FMod back then, which I also love, the guys from FMod still.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, Stefan Schütze had those first videos up, and I was like, what? You can do this like, it's like interactive. I was so, I was really sparkling my eyes, like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is so interesting to get this in an interactive manner instead of like having this linear way that was always the approach that I had in the Pro Tools session or in the Nuendo session back then that we had. So I was so fascinated by that. And for me, it was always the moment I started with game audio, I was always trying to be as early in the production phase as possible. And work from the beginning with the team and not being, like, hey, we do this thing, and then there is this last 2 months, 2 weeks where, hey, here is now the thing, do audio, And I'm really happy about what game audio can do, and that we are part from the beginning, and that is really also something that is specifically true here at Larian. I think where we are, audio is an integral part from the beginning, and we working on stuff from the beginning. This is really good.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with systems. It starts with content, and it builds at each milestone towards where you arrive at the end of it, and it doesn't stop. Development carries through all the way to the end, and then after in today's live service games. And so this idea of always contextualizing your sound, music, and dialogue decisions as you're developing, and ensuring that those mix foundations that you establish are carrying forward the intention of the experience. And it is dramatic how much that has changed in the time that you're talking about. The span of 20 years is like a lifetime in game development, and it's great to be here talking today about all of the things you've been able to do with what's in the box with Wwise. So super cool.
I even always think like the stuff that we did with that we used, the tools that we used and that we use now, and we are in this position of like, hey, we can do this now. This is so cool, and this is like, this is like a standard. Look at the media in general. When you look at how long you do audio for movies, and how long it took them to find real work pipelines and routines that are now still up there. But look at just to explain the idea. Look at a baker. Baking bread is something that had thousands of years of experience how to get to have good bread. So they can really go back to knowledge that is there for a very long time. And we are in the beginning of all of this media stuff. We always think about, hey, this is how we did it. But the stuff that we are shipping at the moment and that we are producing at the moment in 20 years and 30 years, we will just laugh at the, like, like this was mono, like now, or this is black and white, like, and there will be the point in time where we are super excited about those ancient methods that people did it back then, and this is us now. But I'm think it's so exciting to be in the middle of all of that development, because it is so rapid and there are cool things going on. And the moment I started with game audio, and I used to be more of a tech sound designer like Matheus as well. The term was not around back then. I just did the audio stuff. So, and I was like in tech stuff. Nowadays, I'm looking at people like, having Matheus in the team. It's like, just like, wow, look at that stuff. I would never imagine to have that done back then in the days. And I think this is it's so cool to have those people and find new people out there, the youngsters, so to speak, that coming in and coming up with all of those crazy ideas where you just like, we need that because there's a reason to achieve a good soundscape, and then let them basically break loose and experiment and explore and figure cool stuff out. So I love that so much.
Yeah, and it's back to what you were saying about empowering your knowledge holders to create something based on this vision that you hold, right? Like, here's something we need, here's the tools or the constraints that we're under, like how can we achieve this towards the realization of the vision. So yeah, it's and that's always been true. Whether you're having to craft those tools in the programmer minds, or whether you just open up the box and reach for it. And today I think we're able to go further faster in the direction of those unique visions because of what is available. So yeah, nice way to encapsulate that. So great, folks. If there's questions coming in, I think we're going to jump into this second demonstration. There was mention of interest in that, Matheus. If you're ready to go into part 2, okay, let's go for it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right,
I'm ready.
Hook.
Here we are back in Wwise. Let's do it. Cool. So just to recap, we're gonna work on this second example. So we're gonna basically add bass to spells that lack bass at the moment. So let's go back in there. So we already have the measurements that we need. So let's, for example, grab here. We have the low RTPC, side spells low. So I can measure how much low end I have. Actually, you know what? Let's do high end because I believe there's a good example in here. Let me take a quick listen in here. Yeah, let's go with Eldritch Blast and high end. I think that's going to be a good example.
The crowd goes wild.
Oh, of course, because everyone wanted Eldritch Blast. So there you go. Cool. So good. Let's go back here to our bus structure. So I already have the sends going on. So you have side spells full, and then you have it to high. Then you have the meter. And then in the meter, you have the RTPC. So all we got to do now, because we already have all this measurement going on, is go to the top spells bus. And in this case, let's go with a harmonizer. Let's say in this case, there's a little bit of high end in there, but I'm going to pretend there is not because I want to show you how I could use this as an exciter kind of thing to create high end when there's no high end or not enough. I go in here and let's say an octave higher, so it sounds harmonic, and 2 octaves higher. The trick in here is using filters. You don't want the entire spectrum of these new duplicates, of these new voices, right? You want just certain parts of them. So probably, let's get a bandpass here. And again, I'm ballparking this. I have no idea if these are good. Hopefully they are. Let's do a high pass here. Cool. Good. So now I have dry level, wet level. And what I want to control with the RTPC in this case is the wet level. So the amount of new content that I'm generating in this plugin, right?
Great.
And of course, you could use the dry level for gain compensation. If it becomes too loud, then just decrease that in here. You can control this with the RTPC as well. Really up to whoever's doing this, right? Depends on the game as well. Depends on the context. But anyway, let's move on and apply the RTPC. Here we go. This curve doesn't work right now, I believe. Let's take a look here. Let me think about this. So we have the RTPC measuring side spells high.
Mm-hmm.
If there's not enough, I actually want more.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. If there's enough, I don't want anything to change. So this makes sense.
Perfect.
So Again, let's make this super obvious. This will probably make this a little bit too loud, so I'm not going to go all the way to 120 dB because I don't want to explode our ears. So let's
Right.
just do 12. Let's see. Oh, there you go. Right, so it's right here right now. Oh yeah, I can't manually control this true because it's being set every audio frame, right? So me doing this will not change it. I was trying to show you. I can probably move this instead. Sounds good. 1 sec. There you go. Original. Extra high end. And again, this is an exaggeration. You would spend some time on this and make it sound as nice as you can. More reasonable value probably in this case. This was a little bit too much. So, let's just try to make this sound a little bit better. Let's see. Yeah, that's better. Cool. There you go, high end, where there was not a lot of high end before. Of course, if the sound already has high frequency content, you can use an EQ instead. It depends on the situation, right? But yeah, I mean, in our case, we had spells that were either like too bassy or too bright by design. Originally, they were like, oh yeah, this is a spell that has to do with this topic, therefore you need more energy, the low end kind of thing. But that causes challenges in the mix, right? So what we try to do with this little harmonizer trick is kind of make them sound a little bit more like each other. So they still retained their original intent, style, and all, but it was just easier to mix, essentially.
Perfect. Yeah, because now you could fill in that pocket or kind of reinforce that frequency spectrum that, dynamically helped to reinforce the spell.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great example. And as someone in the chat points out, crossing the boundary between design and mix, right? Where is that line? It's always moving. It's dynamic.
Yeah, actually.
Excellent. Question coming in. Multi-band compression on the end of the mastering chain. Tell us about Wwise Mastering Suite. Were you able to use that? Did you do some compression there as well?
We did, very mild, because it's hard to predict what it's going to do. So it was really just for a little bit of control to avoid extreme situations, right? We had a good example in some places in the game, mostly because of music and ambience and reverb as well. We had very bad peaks around 600 hertz, and it made things very boomy, right, in tunnels and spaces like that.
Yeah.
And multi-band compression helped, actually, quite a lot.
Nice.
Yeah. I also think that for the mastering, that was one of the first things, because there was a master bus. The mastering was already set up at the point when I came in. The first thing that I wanted Matheus to do, one of the first things, was getting rid of the mastering, like completely. First of all, we do a mix. Mastering is afterwards.
Yeah.
You should not rely on your mastering as the tool to make your mix good. You should have a good mix. And then at the end, you can do, it's about polishing, it's about details, it's about last bits and pieces that you cannot control on another level in your mix, and then use the mastering tools. But I'm happy that they are now in, and that there are good ways of providing a mastering channel.
Well, I think that philosophy is really valuable because, like you said, you want your mix to be good throughout development. You don't want to feel like you're hearing something applied globally that might not actually make sense when you do arrive at a place where you need to kind of control those errant frequencies or make some kind of global decision about the dynamics or dynamic range of your project. And so I think there's something really valuable for folks to take away from that. Were there other places where you're using the mastering suite with regards to, I don't know, presets that folks can toggle in a UI, dynamic range settings for other, play types?
No, we didn't use the mastering suite. Actually, no, we did have two settings. I just remembered. Stefan, we did have the low dynamic range setting for master suite. I just remembered. Yeah, so we used the limiter in there in the mastering suite, set to the adaptive mode. I think that's really good. I like that one. In terms of swapping share sets for the mastering suite, we only had two: high dynamic range, low dynamic range, right? We chose to actually do a little bit of like a submix for the low dynamic range mode. So we manually went through the project, and whatever, could be a little bit more crunched, we just did it manually because we wanted more control over how it was going to sound like without using just compression.
It was important to me that we don't rely for the low dynamic range version just on push that together now, and that should work. So we went there. We used now a new mixing hierarchy to get a little bit, get this a little bit together in the mix properly, and then a little bit of the mastering suite on top. That made it work way better, because it was really, I always think as said, it should come from the mix. It makes a lot of sense to already have a good sounding mix and then use a mastering suite or additional plugins here.
Right. So
you're getting
yeah, go ahead.
One of the reasons we didn't need different share sets for the mastering suite and a lot of settings for the users is because the mix just sounded good. Whether you were playing with headphones, big speakers, it sounded good. So we didn't really need to resort to a lot of mastering, different settings for the mastering suite, right?
Well, and I guess what I'm hearing is that it was another mix state, right? High dynamic range, low dynamic range, and then you're able to use that in places where you wanted to just change the mix when that toggle in the UI had been flipped. So again, not necessarily a mastering side change, but also had mix repercussions. And this again feels like an emerging theme in your talk, that really it's about that foundational mix and making sure that sounds as good as it can, leveraging the mastering tools for the kind of safety or global fixes that can arise and that you need some controls over, but ultimately leveraging that mix as the best representation.
Yeah. I'm teaching now for, I think, like 2008, 2009, so yeah, for almost 15 years on various universities in Europe. And every time I'm talking about that, it is always for me about, oh my God, we lost Matheus.
Oh, I have a feeling he'll be right back.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So
I'm still here. I just can't see you guys anymore.
Ah.
It says the director muted me.
Oh no!
I'll have you refresh the camera sharing service if you would.
Let me do that. Yep,
jump
I'm
back
doing that
in.
right
Cool,
now.
cool. All right.
That's it. So while you're doing that, I give you a little bit of time to do that. But yeah, so for me, it's all about to understand that you work with what I think is so cool about audio in general, game audio, any type of audio, that actually what we can achieve with only 3 parameters. In reality, the only 3 parameters that we really have is frequency, is amplitude, and is time. Those are the 3 things. It's always a waveform. It's always louder or frequency based. And every plugin that you ever used is always relying on those parameters. A granular synthesizer is combining, is working with time. Compressor is working with amplitude and amplitude. An EQ is working with amplitude and frequency combined in several ways. And I think this is like one of the most, the coolest thing about audio, that we only have those 3 things. And we have so much cool stuff that we can do with that, and so much that we can achieve and do. And I'm always fascinated by that. So there's actually a thing. So therefore, for me, it's always important to go into the mix and facilitate that right, and do the work with the knowledge of you can work with a frequency. You need to make room for certain things, and you don't just stack stuff on top of each other and then it kind of sounds something. You can work. You can have those frequency juggling. You can have the work properly with amplitude and all of those things together. I think that is at least a core philosophy, that if you know your core knowledge about audio, you bring that even to the stuff that now Matheus was showing, the more sophisticated mixing in-game audio, like inventing stuff that haven't been done before in game audio, or maybe have been done before by other people in different ways, but that's our setup. This is what we use here at Larian, and that is based on those 3 parameters. And Matheus did a great job in figuring out how to get there. So I'm super excited about that stuff.
Yeah,
it's just like, this is what fascinates me so much about audio in general, to be honest.
Yes, and welcome back, Matheus. And what you're talking about is, leveraging the experience that we have with sound across other mediums as well, right? And I think that that's one thing that's getting really exciting in interactive audio, is being able to pull from the deep knowledge well. Like we were talking about the history of film, 100 years, and now we're bringing forward a lot of these ideas across, film and television, music, right? And we've arrived at a place interactively where we have these tools to approach sound in a similar fashion while still embracing what's really unique about interactive, and that's that dynamic moment-to-moment focus on what's important for the player and what the vision of the experience is.
And that's the cool thing, because we can even go beyond that now. We are not limited to some of the things that our colleagues in movie and TV are limited to. We can go beyond that, and this is like the crazy stuff. This is why game audio is so cool, because we can go above that, and we have those combination of this interactive media together with audio. It's just like, yeah, never mind.
Excellent. Okay, let's wind it down. It was a incredible Eldritch Blast. Yeah,
it was an Eldritch Blast. Yes.
An Eldritch Blast of mixing in Baldur's Gate 3. Fantastic illustrations, a great encapsulation of mixing. And when we say that, we mean a lot of different things. And you've done a great job of illustrating some of those decisions that you're making about sound and how it reaches the ears of folks out there playing. Really cool tricks. If folks missed it, that voice of the dungeon master, so cool. The dice rolls with the randomized 3D paths. Again, folks, put your ears on that and have a listen. Any last words or thoughts that you'd like to impart on folks?
Matheus, first.
Me? So subtly?
Yeah. Do you have some first? Do you have some first last?
No, words? No, I do actually. So yeah, when it comes to mixing, really give it time. The more you do it, the more it makes sense. I know, like Damien was saying, oh yeah, you made it seem easy. Honestly, that's because I've done this countless times. Really, yeah, it's really a matter of practice. Try things out. It's time for experimentation, like Stefan said. That's it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks, Matheus. Yeah. And for me, my last words are, so game audio, fucking awesome, do it. But the other one that also is super important to me is like just pointing out again that all of that stuff that we can show now is based on so much awesome work of such an awesome team worldwide within Larian. and it's super important for me to point out that we cannot put sound on nothing. So therefore, all of our colleagues doing such a great work and did such a great work with BG3. So thanks for shout out to the team worldwide and to all of the other studios. Thank you for dealing with us and giving us cool stuff to put sound on. Those are my famous last words.
Excellent. Well, it's inspiring to hear about your process. Thanks for sharing that with me and with the community of folks out there using Wwise and interactive audio in general. I think a lot of these things scale across any audio system that you're working with. There's a lot of great fundamentals in what you're talking about. Loved the cooking show hands-on multi-band examples. Excellent, expertly navigated.
Thank you.
We'll see you both. We'll see you both in the future on the ground in San Francisco at the Game Developers Conference, and yeah, maybe some folks from the community will get to catch the even deeper dive when we bring it to San Francisco next week and carry those to the community on our YouTube channel in the future. So again, thanks for contributing to that culture of knowledge share that we have in game audio by extending yourselves to these presentations. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It was super fun.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks, Matheus, for the good presentation.
Thank you.
Well done.
You too.
Stay tuned. Wwise Up on Air. Keep them peeled for the future episodes, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.